Yes, now to Ukraine. Very serious issue. It's day 33 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and President Volodymyr Zelensky says the country is prepared to discuss a neutral status as part of a peace deal ahead of face-to-face negotiations due to take place in Turkey from today.
Yeah, it's a massive development, this. It comes as the country's intelligence officials warn that Russia is trying to split Ukraine like Korea. They say Moscow is unable to swallow the country and faces guerrilla warfare if it tries to divide it.
Yes, well, the Ukrainian president said in his overnight address that there had been a cultural shift, with even Ukrainians sympathetic to Russia changing their attitude to hatred in the wake of the killing of civilians and the destruction of cities.
Yeah, and of course, over the weekend in the US, Joe Biden has personally denied that he called for regime change after he called President Putin a butcher who cannot be allowed to remain in power. I feel quite sorry, actually, for whoever has to walk around behind Joe Biden just with a massive mop and a bucket, just cleaning up after all his gaffes.
Yes, well, let's talk to Professor Anthony Glees, who's a security expert at the University of Buckingham. Thank you for joining us this morning. Is Biden, in some respect, a danger to global security? He does keep making gaffes which are quite serious.
Well, I don't think that this is a big gaffe, if it's a gaffe at all, to tell you the truth. Of course, Joe Biden is an old man, and old men can be grumpy and can misspeak, and he's always misspoken the whole of his political career, even when he was young. But if you want Putin not to have a victory, then you have to speak very plainly. And if you look at what President Biden said, these were actually, I think, rather reasoned words. He said, for God's sake, this man cannot stay in power. That's not saying the United States is going to get rid of him, we're waging a war against Russia. It's stating the blindingly obvious. There's not a single person of any decency in the United Kingdom that would disagree with those comments. Putin is a war criminal. He butchered people left, right and centre, obliterating cities. Of course he can't stay in power. It's absurd to say otherwise. The truth is that the moment that Biden started to get tough, when he said a few days ago that if chemical and biological weapons were used, then the US would respond like with like, he didn't mean they would use chemical and biological weapons. What he meant was, if you escalate, Mr. Putin, we will escalate. And that's right. And that's brought some results, in my opinion.
Yeah, and, you know, there is a strong argument for that. But I do you mentioned you don't think it's a gaffe because he's just telling the truth. Putin cannot be allowed to stay in power. But it is still the case that you have to be very careful when you're advocating for democracy whilst calling for somebody who is, well, we know Russia's not exactly a beacon of democracy, but while calling for somebody who's democratically elected, on paper at least, to go. I mean, it's a dangerous line to tread, isn't it?
Well, I actually disagree. I think what's been dangerous has been the shilly-shallying by NATO, a weak NATO Secretary General, more concerned to keep NATO together and balance different views than actually say the sorts of things that might cause Putin not to have invaded in the first place. And even today, I'm a good friend of Germany and a good friend of France. You've got a German chancellor on national television last night refusing to call Putin a war criminal. You've got Macron saying, I've got to carry on chatting to him. Everybody could see how Macron was humiliated by Putin, that great long table. The truth is, Putin is a Nazi. He's like Hitler. And you don't deal with people like Hitler by trying to chum up to them. Of course, there has to be a peace. Nobody in their right mind wants this awful war to go on. But Putin cannot have a victory. For this reason,
all right.
If Putin...
It's a bit of a leap, isn't it? I take your point and everything like that, but I mean, I do think it diminishes the Nazis when you say Putin is a Nazi. He's not responsible for the deaths of 7 million Jews and the rest and all of this stuff. I mean, you know, I think it's a bit of a leap, really. That I don't want our words to get bandied about too much, really. But look, Joe Biden is clearly terrible when it comes to foreign policy. Look what happened in Afghanistan. And look what's happening now is, you know, the minor incursion. Every single time he says something, there's a team of people somewhere behind him who have to go and qualify what he's just said. He's not up to the job, is he?
Well, I think Biden has certainly learned from Afghanistan, and I was very critical, and you kindly invited me onto GB News in order to be critical of Biden's and indeed Johnson's attitude towards the pullout, the fiasco at Kabul airport and so forth. But Biden is learning, and you and I don't want to get into an argument about what is a Hitler and what isn't a Hitler. Yeah. I do know a bit about that, and to sort of say Hitler is entirely unique and so on. Many people would regard what Putin is doing in Ukraine as genocide, and it's not racial because Ukrainians aren't a race, but he's killing thousands, tens of thousands of people, obliterating cities. These are Nazi tactics, and you don't deal with Nazis by shoving up to them or negotiating with them. You deal with them by defeating them. That's why Zelensky has said that Boris Johnson, man I've got a great deal of time for in the normal course of events. But when Zelensky says Boris Johnson is our staunchest ally in Europe, I think many British people are proud of it. GB News should be proud of it. And why is Boris staunch? Because he calls it the way it is. And he's giving Zelensky and the Ukrainians the weapons they need. They need more. They need Patriot missiles to protect their cities. But we should not be moving at the speed of the slowest. We should be moving at the speed of the fastest. And that's Biden. And every time Biden is criticized, including by Anthony Blinken, he should have kept his mouth shut. He shouldn't have said, oh, he didn't mean this, that, the other. If you look at Biden's words, he did not say the United States wants to, as a country, to attack Russia. He said he should not be in power. And if you call Putin a war criminal, it follows that he shouldn't be in power. You can't have a war criminal in power.
No, fair enough. Look, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much, Anthony. Great to have you on the show, as always. Professor Anthony Glees, their security expert at the University of Buckingham, just reacting to Joe Biden's comments.